the fourth one in this particular series, okay, on Google Secure AI framework. Now, there's an attack actually called as an, not a risk, called as an excessive data handling. Now, excessive data handling, okay, comes under, what is called the overfitting. There are two concepts in AI whenever the data is actually formed, okay, so data is collected. One is called as underfitting, the other one is called as overfitting. So, underfitting is collecting less data or collecting just features from the data than what is actually required. Okay, it's actually called as an underfitting. Now, collecting more features about the data than what is required, or collecting more data than what is actually required, is actually called as an excessive, so overfitting. Now, this excessive data handling comes under what is called the overfitting. Now, what is the situation? See, there are, you need to make the data set and you are collecting the data, but when you are collecting the data, you are collecting the data which is not relevant, okay, for the current context, and thinking that it might be of any use or some use tomorrow. Okay, so that's the situation is called as a excessive data handling. Okay. Now, ideally, excessive data handling leads to a lot of other problems also. Okay, with respect to the privacy, with respect to the computation intensity, etc. Okay, so both technical challenges in the managing the massive data set and significant ethical and security risk associated with it, we will have a look into it. Okay, technical and performance issues, introduction of noise, and then what is called overfitting. Now, whatever data that is not required for the current processing, okay, if it is not relevant for the current processing, it's a noise. Okay, if I don't need an item, okay, to do a particular activity, anything else, okay, is going to add up to the environment, okay, or is present in the environment, that's useless for me. So, for the context of doing some processing, if I'm going to collect the data which is irrelevant, okay, for example, I like Bruce Neer, okay, I subscribe to his newsletter, Cryptogram. So whenever you go to Cryptogram, you subscribe to this newsletter, you have to specify only your email. Anything else is useless, right? So to send a newsletter to someone, I don't need to know his name. All I need is only the email. I don't need to have the mobile number, residential address, nothing, demography, nothing, only the email. So anything else that is collected, okay, will be what is called as an excessive data handling. There's noise. Okay, increased computational cost. So let's say, we are the days where, we are more than, the terabytes, we are into petabytes, zettabytes, etc. Okay. So if I'm going to collect the data which is not relevant to the current context, and that is going to increase the computational storage or the computational power, etc. Okay, so that is irrelevant for me. I'm wasting my money. Okay, I'm wasting the space. I'm wasting the energy on it. So do not collect the data, okay, which is not necessary for you, and store it. Scalability and management problems. Okay, what is actually, let's say, if the data that is required is of 1,000 terabytes, okay, and if I'm going to collect an excessive data which is not relevant, if it's going to increase the space by 2,000, okay, I have a scalability problem. If I don't have that much of computer space, okay, storage space with me, I need to procure a space. Okay, it's going to add on to the cost for me. Data quality degradation. Okay, now if I'm going to have irrelevant data with me, if I'm going to focus on the data quality, okay, it is going to degrade for me. I'll tell you why. Because, see, for example, for me to identify a spam email or a phishing email or a malware, okay, I need let's say 15 features, okay, to identify is a malware or not a malware. If I'm going to collect an extra data which is irrelevant for me, which leads to overfitting. Now, in addition to the 15, there are 3 more features, okay, which is going to be causing an impact for me. So in this particular context, there's going to be a data quality degradation for the data that I'm actually collecting. Okay. Now, operational efficiency, latency, the more the data that I actually have with me, irrelevant, okay, there's going to be a latency issue. Okay, if the amount, let's say, look at the network capacity, instead of sending email, mobile number, first name and last name, if there are a lot of other data that is occupying the network space which is irrelevant, it is going to add up to the latency of the network. Okay, privacy and governance, you are not supposed to have the data. Okay, for example, you are recording the conversation in a particular scenario. Okay, now if you are going to, let's say, if you're going to add or if you're going to capture the background noise of the conversation happening behind also as a part of your recording, that is going to be an invasion into the privacy. Okay, so according to the GDPR, okay, and according to the AI governance, you are not supposed to. There's something of the limitation. You are not supposed to collect the personally identified information, which is more than the required for you for your operations. Okay, so it's going to be a violation into the data protection, be it DPDP, PDP, PDPA, SADAIA, GDPR, etc. Security risk: more data means more attack surface. Okay, now we always say if you're going to have less number of components, okay, in your infrastructure, okay, less number of vulnerabilities are there on your infrastructure. Every single component that is adding to your IT layer, or every single component adding to your artificial intelligence layer, which is surrounded by the web application layer, surrounded by the operating system, surrounded by the hardware, surrounded by the networks, surrounded by the supply chain, or surrounded by the human. Now, more and more component you are going to add on to your AI application will cause an impact. Like every single layer adds on to what is called the vulnerability. Vulnerabilities and the threats will contribute to what is called the security risk. Okay, so we should be extremely careful in choosing the component. Like it might lead to what is called as a data poisoning that we saw in the first video, or the model inversion attack. Okay, that we are going to have a look at in the coming videos. Now, privacy violation, as I told you, okay, uncontrolled data collection and misuse will lead to what is called the privacy violation, and it might lead to what is called the data leakage. If you don't have the data with you, okay, you don't have to bother about that particular data component leakage. If you won't have the data with you, then you need to worry about this. If I'm collecting only the email, okay, I need to secure only the email. If I'm collecting the email, mobile number, okay, the residential address, complete name, etc., I need to worry about each and every data item I'm collecting. Okay, it might lead to a data leakage, and this data leakage need not be only for the email address. It could be for a lot of other aspects also. Now, unauthorized data collection. Okay, misuse of the data. Now there are two things: unauthorized data collection. Okay, now I'm buying the data set from a third party. Okay, when the data set contains the personally identified information, they ideally need to have a consent from the data subject before they give it to me, or when they are actually collecting, they need to ensure that I'm going to use your email, your mobile number, your residential address, okay, and I'm going to subject your data into an artificial intelligence system. Now, the controller of the data, who's collecting the data, should have ideally controlled, collected this information in a controlled manner. Okay. Now, if I'm going to buy it from a third party, all these details actually comes to me. Okay, this is called a secondary data. Okay. Now, again, from them, okay, if it's a bundle that I actually get, I might receive everything, but I might use only one particular component. I need to ensure that based on the data limitation principle, okay, I'm going to use the component which is useful for me, otherwise no. Okay. Regulatory non-compliances, GDPR is what we looked into, and algorithmic bias. Now, if this excessive data is a part of the data set on which the model is being trained, it could lead to what is called as a bias. Now, every single data type that I'm having as a part of my training data set, okay, will contribute to the bias. That's why we always do an EDA before I'm going to subject the data set to what is called the training, testing, and validation phase. So the data ingestion phase, okay, I'm going to collect the data. I'm going to do what is called as prepare the data, look out for the missing values, outliers, etc. Okay, I need to do an EDA, exploratory data analysis, to ensure that okay, the data which is being fed into the training, testing, and validation phase is not having a bias. There is an equal distribution of the gender. Okay, if I'm collecting the age, okay, it should be normalized and standardized. If there should not be any outliers. Okay, and if I'm going to collect the demography, the race, etc. Okay, these are all special categories under the GDPR. If I'm going to collect that, the training data, which is not the live data, okay, I can also create a synthetic data for the training, testing, and validation, should have the stratification, or should have equal distribution of all these parameters, so that the training, testing, and validation does not introduce a bias. Now, if I'm going to collect what more than what is required for me for the training, testing, and validation, I need to also take care of the bias, okay, with additional irrelevant data that I'm actually collecting. Okay, it's additional work for me. Okay, so ensure that we don't collect data which is not necessary for your operations. Data minimization, robust data governance. Before the training data, before you pass on the data set to the training, testing, and validation phase. You will always ensure that there are people who go through the exploratory data analysis. Only if they give an go ahead, okay, or sign off, okay, it should be used as a golden set to the training phase. Otherwise, no. Privacy by design is something that you need to. Privacy by design and privacy by default. These are two terms which was inherited from security by design and security by default. Okay, you need to follow privacy by design. Okay, whenever you're going to go for, whenever you're collecting the personally identified information, especially the GDPR. Now, the GDPR, DPDP, PDPA, okay, and then SADA, okay, all these laws, CCP, etc., they always touch upon this privacy topic. For the data governance, okay, now the AI governance, okay, one of the 7 pillars that we have for the AI governance is the privacy. So, privacy by design is something we need to, you need to adopt to when you're designing an application which is going to deal with the personal data when you're developing it. Okay, so privacy by design and privacy by default after you deploy it. Okay, now there are a lot of fairness by design, explainability by design. Okay, these are the terms that are used in the AI, but for this particular context, ensure that privacy by design and data minimization is what is required. Transparency and the consent. Okay, if you're going to collect the data, tell them that I'm collecting your email address so that I can send you a newsletter. I'm collecting a mobile number so that I can send you a OTP on your mobile or a WhatsApp. I'm collecting your residential address, okay, to send you the package. Okay, it's an online e-commerce platform. So whenever you are collecting the data, for each and every data you are collecting, be transparent with them to say why you are actually collecting it. In this case, if you are collecting the data which is irrelevant for you, okay, you will not be collecting it, okay, because you don't have a justification for collecting it. Bias audits and monitoring. Ideally, there are a lot of tools like Fairness 360. Okay, there are tools that will help you with the biasing. Okay, help you identify the biasing. Okay, and the exploratory data analysis also will help you with the biasing, identify the bias. Leveraging on the appropriate tools. Okay, so all these things are administrative controls. Okay, there are tools that can help you. Okay, with to identify what is required, what is not required, like cognitive things. Okay, so there are techniques like data sampling or the batch processing to manage the large data set efficiently when needed. That means you have collected that. Okay, but how are you going to handle it? So this way, you can go for a data sampling or the batch processing. That means you have got the data with you, but for a particular processing, you don't need everything. Okay, you will be choosy. Okay, on what data item you require for processing it. Okay, there are tools that are available for you, or you yourself can choose what sort of a tool that you actually require. Okay, or what sort of a data that you require from the large set. Okay, for the particular task usage. Okay. So this is Subramaniam, and these are the trainings that we actually do: AI security officer, AI officer, data protection governance risk, ISO 42001 lead implementer. No, in fact, lead implementer is bundled with 21502, which is the project management guideline. So if you are interested to join us for any of the trainings, just mail us on training@ieee.org.uk. Have a good day then. Cheers. Bye bye. Stay subscribed for the remaining videos. Cheers.